The paper that I'm presenting at the conference is about financial inclusion. We want to put this topic under the microscope using very interesting microdata from a developing country. We were motivated in working on financial inclusion by the observation that financial development and economic growth go hand in hand. And the microfinance sector is an important ingredient, a crucial driver of financial development. There's a large and burgeoning literature on financial inclusion and its impact on the real economy, but this literature has somewhat confounding effects depending on the kinds of data or the kinds of empirical setups it uses. For instance, micro-studies of financial inclusion tend to find modest, not transformative effects of financial, of loan expansion programs or microcredit expansion programs on financial development and on economic growth, on small business formation and entrepreneurship. Whereas more aggregated, quasi-experimental or macro types of data tend to deliver better results. So we try to reconcile some of these contrasting findings using very, very high quality supervisory data at the loan level from a developing country. The reason why it's important to study these issues in developing countries is that in such countries, economic agents have little collateralizable wealth. So this means that there are costly informational frictions in credit markets, and these frictions can be further aggravated by the lack of credit reference bureaus. So the case study we are particularly interested in is Rwanda. And Rwanda is a great case study because it's a typical developing country. It has a relatively low credit to GDP ratio of about 24%, just very similar to the sub-Saharan African average, and a bit above the average of about 19% of low-income countries. Rwanda set up recently a large financial inclusion program, a program that aimed at expanding access to loans and to financial services more broadly, but especially targeting underbanked population in the country. And on top of that, Rwanda also has a very well-functioning, comprehensive credit register, which is set up and maintained by a credit reference bureau. So this means that the payment history of every borrower in the country, whether from a credit institution set up by this microcredit or loan expansion program, as well as borrowers from banks and other credit cooperatives or microfinance institutions, that payment history is recorded in the Credit Reference Bureau, in the credit registry dataset, and it is accessible for a fee by any lender in the country. So the Credit Reference Bureau plays an important signaling role, informational role in revealing the creditworthiness of the borrower once the borrower enters, the credit market, be it through a bank or a microcredit institution. So the program was set up in 2011, and an interesting feature of the program is that it was rolled out in a staggered manner in different municipalities across the country. There's about 400 municipalities. In different municipalities, credit cooperatives called U-SACCOs, Umurenge SACCOs, were set up at different points in time. So we exploit the staggered implementation of the program, which gives us this beautiful variation across time and across municipalities in the program rollout, to empirically identify the impact of the program on financial access. We do find that the program had pretty large and economically large effect on financial access. So, post-SACCO setup, after the implementation, the setup and the after the moment that every SACCO became active, the probability of having an outstanding loan for borrowers in Rwanda rose by 3.7 percentage points, and that should be compared with the average financial access before the program of 9.6%. And so that's about 30% increase in financial access once the program was rolled out. And most of this effect comes from the SACCOs themselves. But there are some spillover effects that are extremely interesting coming from the commercial banks. We see commercial banks also increasing the probability of granting loans to new borrowers. So in the second part of the paper, once we establish this baseline effect of the program, we want to look at a particularly exciting type of borrower previously unbanked that enters into the credit market through a SACO set up by this program, we using the credit registry data, we are able to track the borrowing activities of this borrower over time. We observe that about 10% of borrowers in this program end up borrowing from banks later on in the outer years of the program. So there is a transition. Some of the borrowers that enter through the program into credit cooperatives end up graduating from microcredit to the formal financial sector. So the bottom line, the main messages of our paper is that a healthy microfinance sector is very important for financial development, especially when coupled with a credit reference bureau, with a credit registry that facilitates the signaling of creditworthiness of borrowers in underdeveloped credit markets and alleviates financial frictions that make credit very costly in developing countries.